The sun poured to the living room window, painting golden stripes on the wooden floor. The air was still quiet, almost too perfect. Yasmin sat cross-legged on the carpet, sorting through a pile of old books and papers. It was just another slow Saturday, the kind where time feels lazy and everything moves in soft silence. Judin, her husband, had left early that morning for a meeting. He kissed her forehead before walking out, just like he always did. Warm, gentle routine. They had been married for 7 years. Years filled with laughter, weekend getaways, and quiet dinners. Their life wasn't a fairy tale, but it was peaceful, safe. That's what made it so easy to trust. As Yasmin reached for a dusty book on the bottom shelf of Judin's study, something slipped and fell behind a cabinet with a soft thud. Curious, she pushed the books aside and pulled out a small, cream-colored envelope. It was old, the paper slightly yellowed, edges curled like forgotten secrets. Her heart thumped, not out of fear, but from a strange, sudden curiosity. She didn't usually go through Judin's things, but this felt different. Her fingers hesitated for a moment before gently pulling out the photo inside. It was a photograph, a little worn, like it had been held too many times. In it, a woman stood beside a small house, her arm wrapped around a boy who looked about 6 or 7. Both were smiling brightly. The boy had curly dark hair and eyes that sparkled with mischief. Yasmin stared at the photo. She didn't recognize the woman. She didn't recognize the house. But what froze her heart was a boy's face. Something about him felt familiar. She turned the photo over. In neat handwriting, it read, "To Judin, always yours. L." The room suddenly felt colder. The soft afternoon light no longer felt warm. For a moment, Yasmin just sat there, staring at the photo, as if it would speak and explain itself. But all it offered was silence, and 1,000 questions. Who was L? Who were the woman and child? Why had Judin kept this hidden? Yasmin slowly placed the photo back in the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. Her thoughts began to race, each one louder than the last. Her perfect life, the man she trusted, the home they built. Were they all built on a lie? That single photograph, small and silent, had cracked something inside her, and suddenly Yasmin knew she had to find out the truth, even if it broke her. The photograph haunted Yasmin. It stayed tucked away in her drawer, hidden under her notebooks, but her mind couldn't let it go. Every time she closed her eyes, the smiling boy's face appeared. His eyes, his dimples, even the way his hair curled slightly at the ends. All felt too familiar, too close to home. Over the next few days, Yasmin watched Judin closely, not in anger, but in quiet confusion. She wanted to believe that there was a simple explanation. Maybe the woman was an old friend. Maybe the child wasn't his. Maybe the message on the back didn't mean what it seemed to mean. But the doubt had already taken root, and doubt has a way of growing fast. She began noticing things she hadn't paid attention to before. Judin had started receiving more phone calls at odd hours, short conversations that ended with a soft, "I'll call you back later." He would smile at her, act like everything was normal, but Yasmin could see the way his eyes shifted, the way guilt sat quietly behind them. One evening, while they were having dinner, his phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up quickly, his eyes darting to her before flipping the phone over, face down. Just a small action, but it felt loud to Yasmin, louder than words. "Who was that?" she asked gently, trying to keep her voice calm. "Just someone from the office," he replied, not meeting her gaze. "Work stuff." Work stuff. That answer used to be enough. Not anymore. Later that night, as Judin slept beside her, Yasmin sat up in bed, her heart heavy. The silence between them had grown thick, filled with unspoken questions. She picked up her phone and stared at the photograph again. The house in the background, small, painted a faded blue, with a red mailbox, looked like it belonged in a quiet town, far from the busy city they lived in. Yasmin had an idea. She uploaded the photo to an online image search tool and waited as it scanned for matches. After a few minutes, her screen lit up with results. One image caught her eye, a match. It was a listing for a house in a town called Brookville, 3 hours away. Her heart raced. It wasn't just in her head. This place was real, The photo wasn't old or random. It was connected to someone real, living just a drive away. The next day, she acted normal. She smiled. She kissed Judden goodbye as he left for work. But inside, her mind was spinning. A few days later, Judden told her he had a site visit in a nearby town for the weekend. "I might stay overnight," he said casually. "Don't wait up." Yasmin smiled and nodded. "I was thinking of going on a solo writing retreat this weekend," she replied. "Might help me clear my head." He seemed pleased. That sounds great. But she wasn't going to any retreat. She was going to follow him. Saturday morning, Yasmin waited until Judden left, then packed a small bag, grabbed her car keys, and started the drive to Brookville. The highway stretched long and quiet, but her thoughts were loud, full of fear, anger, and questions. What if she was wrong? What if she was right? After 3 hours, she reached the town. It was peaceful, with tree-lined streets and houses that looked like they hadn't changed in years. Yasmin drove slowly, checking the address from the listing she had found online. Finally, she saw it, the house from the photo, the red mailbox, the faded blue walls. She parked a short distance away, her hands shaking as she waited. Minutes passed. Then she saw him, Judden. He walked up the front path of the house and knocked on the door. A woman opened it. The same woman from the photograph. She smiled as if she had been expecting him. A small boy ran out from behind her, his laughter filling the air as he rushed into Judden's arms. Judden knelt down and hugged him tightly, lifting him in the air. They looked like a family. Yasmin felt her breath catch. Her world didn't shatter with a loud crash. It cracked slowly, painfully, like glass under pressure. She couldn't watch anymore. With tears in her eyes and a storm in her chest, she started the engine and drove away. The image of her husband holding a child, his child, burned deep into her memory. She had found the truth. Now she had to face it. Yasmin didn't know how long she had been driving. The road stretched endlessly in front of her, and trees blurred past her windows like streaks of green and gold. But inside, her thoughts were sharp, clear, and painful. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Her eyes, still wet with tears, stared straight ahead, refusing to blink. She had seen enough. Judden was living a second life, a life with another woman and a child who looked like him, a child who called him Dad. The weight of that truth sat heavily on Yasmin's chest, pressing down with every breath. How long had this been going on? Why didn't he tell her? Who was the woman, Lena? The one who signed the photo? And most of all, was their entire marriage a lie? Yasmin pulled into the parking lot of a small roadside motel. Her body felt numb, but her mind was screaming. She checked in with a quiet voice, avoiding eye contact, and locked herself in the room. The bed was stiff. The air smelled like dust and old memories. She sat by the window, still wearing her coat, holding her phone in her hands, but not knowing what to do with it. She could call him. She could scream. She could ask 1,000 questions. But would she even believe the answers? Her phone buzzed suddenly, a message from Judden. "Hope your retreat is going well. Can't wait to hear what you write. Miss you." Yasmin stared at the words. Her hands shook as she read them. How could he lie so easily? How could he send her love while hugging his son in another woman's house? She didn't reply. She couldn't. That night, Yasmin lay awake, eyes wide open in the darkness. Her mind played old memories like a movie. Their wedding day, their honeymoon, the quiet nights on the balcony with wine and laughter, Judden reading her poems out loud, his silly jokes, his soft kisses on her forehead. Were all those moments real, or were they carefully placed lies, stitched together to keep her blind? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she remembered how he used to look at her, with eyes full of love, or at least what she thought was love. Now, all she could see was betrayal. The next morning, Yasmin couldn't stay in a motel room any longer. She needed answers, not just guesses and fears. She wanted to understand what had happened, and more importantly, when it had all started. She drove back to the neighborhood, parking a little further this time, careful not to be seen. From across the street, she watched the house again. It looked so normal. A bite, was lying on the lawn. There were flower pots on the steps. Wind chimes danced in the breeze. It was a kind of home Yasmin once dreamed of, peaceful, full of life. After about an hour, she saw the woman, Lena, come outside with the boy. They were laughing. She looked warm, gentle, and nothing like what Yasmin expected. She wasn't a villain in this story. She looked like someone who was simply living her life. Then the door opened again. Judden stepped out. He kissed the boy on the forehead, hugged Lena briefly, and walked his car. Yasmin ducked slightly, hiding behind her own steering wheel as he drove off. Her stomach twisted. She could feel the truth sinking deeper into her. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a fling. This was something ongoing, something hidden, something planned. Later that day, Yasmin returned home. The house, her home, felt different now. Colder, quieter. Even the air seemed heavier. She walked into the kitchen where she had cooked hundreds of meals. She passed the hallway where their wedding photo hung. She stood in their bedroom and looked at the bed they shared. But now, every corner of the house whispered lies. She opened her drawer, took out the envelope, and looked at the photo again. This time, it didn't shock her. It made her angry, not just at Judden, but at herself. How did I not see this coming? Why did I trust so blindly? But deep down, she knew the answer, because love makes you trust, even when you shouldn't. When Judden returned later that evening, everything looked normal, at least on the surface. He walked in with a tired smile, kissed her cheek, and asked, "How was the retreat?" Yasmin forced a smile. Quiet, peaceful. She said nothing more. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she watched him closely, his body language, his words, the way he carried himself. Every move he made now seemed suspicious. Even his kindness felt false, like a performance. That night, Yasmin couldn't sleep again. She stared at the ceiling, her heart aching. The truth had changed her. It had opened a door she could never close. But one thing was clear. She couldn't keep pretending. The photograph had shown her the truth. Now it was time to show Judden that she knew. Yasmin stood in the kitchen the next morning, watching the coffee drip slowly into the pot. The smell filled the room like it always did. Warm, familiar, comforting. But nothing felt comforting anymore. She had barely slept. Her mind had spent the night building a storm, and now it was ready to pour. Judden walked in a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes and yawning. "Morning," he said with a sleepy smile. "Coffee smells amazing." Yasmin nodded, silent. Her eyes followed him as he poured himself a cup, humming under his breath. How easily he moved through their home. How easily he smiled, as if nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't broken everything. She waited until he took a sip, then placed the envelope on the table between them. Judden froze. His hand gripped the mug tighter, and the humming stopped. Slowly, he looked down at the envelope, then back at her. "What's this?" he asked, though the answer was already written on his face. "You tell me," Yasmin replied quietly. He opened it, pulled out the photo, and stared at it. His face didn't show surprise, just guilt, a deep, quiet guilt that told her everything she needed to know. He didn't speak for a few seconds. Then he let out a shaky breath and whispered, "You found it." "Yes," Yasmin said, her voice calm, too calm. "And I followed you." Judden's head jerked up, eyes wide now. "You followed me?" She nodded. "To Brookville. I saw everything. The house, the woman, the boy." Silence. She didn't cry. Not this time. Her tears had dried in that motel room. What she felt now was something colder, heavier. "Why, Judden?" she asked, her voice trembling at last. "Why did you lie to me? For how long? Who is she? Who is he?" Judden sat down, his hands shaking slightly as he placed the photo back on the table. "Her name is Lena," he said softly. "We were together a long time ago. Before you. It wasn't serious. We broke up, lost contact." "And the boy?" she asked, her throat tightening. "His name is Ayan. He's my son." The words fell like glass between them. Yasmin leaned against the counter, needing support to stay standing. "He's 6, she whispered. That means you've known for a while. Judin nodded slowly, shame burning in his eyes. Lena reached out 2 years ago. She said she didn't want anything from me. Just thought I should know. At first, I didn't believe her. But I met him and I knew. Yasmin stared at him, her voice low and broken. 2 years, Judin. 2 years, and you said nothing. I was scared, he said, his voice cracking. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you. So you thought it was better to lie? To sneak around? To build a second life behind my back? I wasn't living a second life, he shouted, then caught himself. His voice dropped again. I was just trying to be there for my son. I want to protect you. Yasmin's laugh was bitter. Protect me? From what? The truth. Judin rubbed his face with both hands. I love you, Yasmin. I never stopped. This doesn't change that. But it does, she whispered. Everything's changed. The room was silent, except for the sound of the coffee machine humming in the background. Yasmin sat down across from him. Her eyes met his, not with anger, but with pain, deep, quiet pain. I would have understood, she said softly. If you had told me from the beginning, I would have listened, maybe even supported you. I didn't want to break us, he said. You've always wanted a child. I didn't know how to tell you I already had one with someone else. Tears filled her eyes again, but she blinked them back. You broke us anyway. Judin looked down, ashamed. They sat in silence for a long time, both holding pieces of shattered truth in their hands. Finally, Yasmin spoke. So what now, Judin? What do you want? I want to fix this, he said immediately. I want to be honest. I want to make it right. She nodded slowly, then stood up. I need space, she said. I need time to think. I don't know if I can forgive this or forget it. Judin stood too, panic in his voice. Please don't leave. I'm not leaving forever, she said. But I need to find out who I am now outside of this mess. He looked at her with sorrow in his eyes. I'll wait. Yasmin picked up her bag, pausing at the door. Her hand rested on the knob for a long second. I still love you, she said, but love isn't always enough. And then she walked out, not just of the house, but out of the story she thought was hers. A new chapter had begun, one where she would write the truth. The door clicked softly behind Yasmin as she stepped out, carrying the weight of everything she had just heard. Outside, the air was crisp, but it didn't bring comfort. Instead, it felt sharp, like the truth itself was slicing through her heart. She walked aimlessly at first, her mind swirling with memories and questions, anger and sorrow. How had she not seen this? How had Judin hidden this part of his life, this whole other family from her? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she didn't check it. It was probably Judin apologizing again, begging her to stay. She wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. Yasmin found herself at a small park bench near the river. She sat down, watching the water flow quietly. The river didn't care about lies or secrets. It just moved forward, carrying everything along with it. She wanted to be like that river, to keep moving. Yasmin's heart felt torn in two. One part still clung to the memories of her marriage, the love she thought was real. The other part was cold, distant, struggling to accept the betrayal. She thought about the boy, Ayan, a child she had never met, but who carried her husband's blood. She wondered if Judin loved him as much as he said he loved Yasmin. Was it possible to love two families? Or was that love divided and broken? The questions didn't have answers yet. She wiped tears from her cheeks, feeling the ache settle deep inside her chest. Back in the motel room, Yasmin paced the floor. The walls felt like they were closing in, and silence echoed around her like a ghost. She reached for her journal, something she hadn't touched in months. Writing was her refuge, the way she had always made sense of chaos. With a shaky hand, she opened it and began to write. I don't know who I am anymore. The woman who trusted him blindly is gone. Now I'm just lost. The man I loved kept a secret so big it changed everything. How do you rebuild when the foundation was cracked from the start? She closed the journal, her breath shaky. The next day, Yasmin called her best friend, Sarah. Can we meet? Yasmin's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah arrived quickly, wrapping Yasmin in a warm hug. "I don't know what to do," Yasmin confessed, tears streaming down her face. "Everything feels like a lie." Sarah listened, offering comfort without judgment. "You're strong, Yasmin. You will get through this, one day at a time." Yasmin nodded, grateful but still unsure. The road ahead was long and uncertain. Days passed. Yasmin stayed mostly inside, avoiding calls, messages, and questions from neighbors. She spent hours staring out the window, lost in thought. But slowly, she began to find small moments of clarity. She realized that forgiveness wouldn't come quickly, nor would it come easily. She had to decide if she could forgive Judden, and if she wanted to. More importantly, she had to decide if she could forgive herself for trusting blindly. One evening, Yasmin sat at her desk, staring at the photograph one last time. The woman, Lena, was smiling, the boy's eyes bright. They represented a life she never imagined, a secret she never wanted to face. But the photo also reminded her of something else, the truth, and the strength she needed to face it. Yasmin took a deep breath and picked up her pen. She was ready to write the next chapter, not one full of lies or secrets, but one filled with honesty, even if it hurt. Yasmin sat quietly in the small cafe, the cup of tea warming her hands. The world around her moved on. Strangers laughed, couples talked, children played. But inside, everything felt paused, suspended between what was and what could be. She had spent the last few weeks in a whirlwind of emotions: shock, anger, sadness, confusion. Now, the storm was settling. What remained was a difficult choice. Could she forgive Judden? Could she accept the truth? Could she rebuild a life that had been broken? Her mind drifted back to the confrontation, the way Judden's eyes had looked when he admitted everything. Shame, regret, but also love. He wasn't perfect. He had made mistakes. But he had been honest, at last. Yasmin thought about the boy Ayan, the child she had never met, but whose existence changed everything. Could she be part of that story, too? Could she find a way to love again, not just Judden, but the life he carried with him? The questions were hard. The answers were not clear. Later that day, Yasmin agreed to meet Judden at the park, the place where they had once dreamed of a future together. He was already there when she arrived, sitting on a bench, nervous but hopeful. "Yasmin," he said quietly, standing up as she approached. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "I've thought a lot about us, about everything." Judden nodded, waiting. "I can't promise this will be easy," she said, "or that I'm ready to forget, but I want to try. I want to understand." Tears welled in her eyes. "For me, for you, and for Ayan." Judden reached for her hand, trembling. "Thank you. I'll do whatever it takes." In the weeks that followed, they began to rebuild, slowly, carefully. There were difficult conversations, moments of doubt and tears, but also moments of honesty, forgiveness, and hope. Judden introduced Yasmin to Lena and Ayan. The meetings were awkward at first, full of silent questions and careful smiles. But over time, bonds started to form. Yasmin realized love was not always simple. Sometimes it was messy, complicated, and painful, but it was also resilient. One evening, Yasmin sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. She felt a quiet peace settle in her heart. She didn't know what the future held. The past couldn't be changed, and the path ahead was uncertain. But she knew this much. She was no longer living a story someone else had written for her. She was writing her own, with courage, truth, and a new kind of love. And that made all the difference.